Hare Krishna. My name is Bhagavad-gita, and I will read from Bhagavad-gita. Bhagavad-gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So, I will continue with the introduction. It is getting more and more interesting, page by page, I find. So I hope you will continue this journey with me. In the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad-gita, the real picture of the material world is given. It is said there, Urdhva Moolam Adhang Shakham Ashvathang Prahuravyayam Chandangsi Yasya Paranani Yasthang Veda Savedavit. Here the material world is described as a tree whose roots are upwards and branches are below. We have experience of a tree whose roots are upwards. If one stands on the bank of a river, he can see that the trees reflect in the water. The trees reflected in the water are upside down. The branches go downward and the roots go upward. Similarly, this material world is a reflection of the spiritual world. The material world is but a shadow of reality. In the shadow, there is no reality or substance, no reality or substantiality, but from the shadow we can understand that there are substance and reality. In the desert, there is no water, but the mirage suggests that there is water elsewhere, that there is such a thing as water. In the material world, there is no water, there is no happiness, but the real water of actual happiness is there in the spiritual world. Yes, this is also interesting. Sometimes we feel that the world is divided into materialists who consider this material existence to be all in all, and to the monistic spiritualists who consider this material world to entirely be an illusion. As followers of Lord Krishna, though, we recognize the true nature of this world. It does exist. It certainly does exist. We are here. We are not completely in illusion. The illusion is that we do not understand the nature of this world, our own nature, and how we connect in the eternal spiritual existence. But the fact that we are here and that something is here, that we exist, something exists, it points to a fact that existence is a reality. Now, such a nice example. The tree is a mirror. If you look at the lake and you see the tree mirrored, you don't go there to pick fruits, because that is useless. But the fact that the tree is reflected in the lake means the tree must exist. The reflection does not come about by itself. So this world, our existence here, it points to the fact that there is a real actual existence somewhere. That somewhere is the spiritual world. Just like water. In a desert, there is a mirage that somehow is brought about by, I don't know the physics of it, but when the air gets very hot, it creates some kind of reflective surface and it looks like water. And it is not water. But just because the mirage is not water would not prove that there is no water. We all know there is water. There is certainly water. Just not there in the mirage. In the same way, anything we're looking for, happiness, and so on, it may not be here in the objects of the material world, but it is a natural instinct of the living entity to look for happiness, because happiness is actually really there. It's just elsewhere. The Lord suggests that we attain the spiritual world in the following manner, Bhagavad-gita 5.15. Nirmama mohajita sanga dosha adhyatma nitya vinivritta kamaha dvandvair vimukta shuka dukkha samgyair gacchantya mudha padamavyayam tat. That padamavyayam, or eternal kingdom, can be reached by one who is nirmana moha. What does this mean? We are after designations. Someone wants to become Sir, someone wants to become Lord, someone wants to become the president or a rich man or a king or something else. As long as we are attached to these designations, we are attached to the body because designations belong to the body. But we are not these bodies. And realizing this is the first stage in spiritual realization. We are associated with the three modes of material nature, but we must become detached through devotional service to the Lord. Then, if we are not attached to devotional service to the Lord, then we cannot become detached from the modes of material nature. Designations and attachments are due to our lust and desire, our wanting to lord it over material nature. As long as we do not give up this propensity of lording it over material nature, there is no possibility of returning to the kingdom of the Supreme, the Sanatan Dhamma. Yes, there is an eternal kingdom, we have a place there. And in this world, we become entangled, we become illusion, and we become frustrated because we are looking for something. It's just like that tree in the lake. If we reach out to pluck a fruit, all we do get is wet fingers. There's no fruit, but it looks like it's there, and we feel that rightly we should be able to enjoy that fruit, but we cannot pluck it out of the water. Simply, it does not work that way. But it is an indication that we can go somewhere else, and Krishna is here in the Bhagavad-gita informing us of that other place where we have a true standing, where the fruit is real, so to speak. And how to get there is the first step is realizing we are not this body. This is kind of difficult in one sense and kind of logical in another sense, because this body, we are very tightly connected to it. We wake up in the morning, we know who we are. It's interesting though, they are making some experiments by filming a person and letting them watch that film so that it seems like they are standing next to their body because their vantage point is separated from the body, creates such a dissonance and, disidentification with the body. This doesn't prove anything, but it's interesting. Because actually now we are connected to this body through a strong bond of identification. It is possible to give up that identification, but we can't just do it in thin air. It's like any habit you have. It's very difficult to just give it up, but we want to replace it with a healthy habit, with a good habit. So instead of connecting, of identifying as this body, we want to find out what is our true identification. And Krishna is inviting us here that we can, instead of being attached to the activities of the bodies, the aims and goals and desires of this body, we can become connected to devotional service. And this is actually very natural for the soul, to have that attitude of devotional service towards Krishna. But in the beginning we are not used to it. In the beginning it takes a little bit of practice, but it is it's a valid and accessible alternative. And then when we grow stronger in our actual real identity, we are able to give up all these illusory desires, all these attempts of enjoying the water in the mirage and the fruit in the mirror. We can find out a substantial actual reality. And then we can actually enter into that world. That eternal kingdom, which is never destroyed, can be approached by one who is not bewildered by the attraction of false material enjoyment, who is situated in the service of the Supreme Lord. One who is situated, one so situated, can easily approach that supreme abode. Elsewhere in the Gita 8:21 it is stated, Avyaktukshara ityuktas tamahu paramangatim yang prapyana nivartante tadhama paramang mama. Avyakta means unmanifested. Not even all of the material world is manifested before us. Our senses are so imperfect that we cannot even see all of the stars. within this material universe. In Vedic literature, we can receive much information about all the planets, and we can believe it or not believe it. All of the important planets are described in the Vedic literature, especially Srimad Bhagavatam. And the spiritual world, which is beyond this material sky, is described as avyakta, unmanifested. One should desire and hanker after that supreme kingdom, for when one attains that kingdom, he does not have to return to this material world. Yes. This is a description of reality. There is a universe out there, and it is full of stars. And we know about it because at night when we go out, we can see the stars. In the daytime when we go out, we don't see any stars. It doesn't mean they go away, they are still there. But with our senses, we are unable to perceive them. And many things are like that. We know they are there, we know they exist, but we cannot see them, we cannot touch them, we cannot hear them. Not because there is anything wrong with reality, but because our senses are so limited, so very limited. So we may think that that's all we have, and on our own, yes, that's all we have. But we can receive further information from Krishna and the Vedic scriptures and other people. Even in the material world, it is like that. If we have a small child that is born, a child doesn't really know anything. They will on their own learn how to walk. They will reach up, they will try and try. On their own, they will never learn to talk. They have actually done experiments, and it's terrible, it is so cruel. They thought if they left the child alone, we would discover the true internal language of humanity. That is not what happened. That poor child became crazy and suffered very much, because we are always dependent. We are tiny little beings. A newborn baby is tiny. The spirit soul is also always tiny and always dependent on some help and assistance from those who know more. So Krishna knows more than us always, so he will give us the knowledge in the Vedas, and we are able to take it up if we like. We are also able to not do that, but the intelligent thing to do is to take advantage of Krishna's offering here. So, yes, there are planets in this material world. They are described, and there is the spiritual abode. So let's hear a little bit more. Next, one may raise the question of how one goes about approaching that abode of the Supreme Lord. Information of this is given in the 8th chapter. It is said there, Antakali chamameva smaran muktva kalevaram yat prayati sadmad bhavam yati nastyatra sangshayaha. Anyone who quits his body at the end of life remembering me attains immediately to my nature, and there is no doubt of this. Bhagavad-gita 8.5. One who thinks of Krishna at the time of his death goes to Krishna. One must remember the form of Krishna. If he quits his body thinking of this form, he surely approaches the spiritual kingdom. Madhbhava refers to that supreme nature of the Supreme Being. The Supreme Being is Satchitananda Vigraha. His form is eternal, full of knowledge and bliss. Our present body is not Satchitananda. It is Asat, not Sat. It is not eternal, it is perishable. It is not Chit, full of knowledge, but it is full of ignorance. We have no knowledge of the spiritual kingdom, nor do we even have perfect knowledge of the material world, where there are so many things unknown to us. The body is also Nirananda. Instead of being full of bliss, it is full of misery. All of the miseries we experience in the material world arise from the body. But one who leaves this body thinking of Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, at once attains a Satchit Ananda body. Yeah, so this is some valid information. Like, we do that. In this world, we plan ahead. We do some research. We figure out what are our priorities, what do we lack, what do we want, and we create a plan. When we're younger, life is ahead of us. We're thinking, what would we want to do in this life? We find out that we may need to study, we may need to apply to a school. So we do our studying, we find out what school is good, and we find out how to access it. what it takes. And that's just a small example. So if we're thinking of this life, it is very important to know who we are so that we can prioritize our life and activities accordingly. And even more so, it is important to know what happens when we die. The Bhagavad-gita has the information. The body is a temporary, we all know that. We all know this body is not going to last forever. Probably at this point, there is less time ahead. Oh, most certainly there is less time ahead than I have behind me. So I know that this body is going to die. I may not know what happens then, but Krishna is giving that information. By the way we live, we are determining, we are actually building up a certain consciousness. That consciousness at the time of death, it will draw us, attract us to that place that corresponds to that consciousness. So if we just die in fear or pain or confusion, that is not a very good plan. So therefore, while we are still alive, it is very good to make a plan for this life and also the next. And Krishna, and I would say I have to agree with Krishna here, recommends that we go to the spiritual world where we have an existence full of Satchitananda, eternality, knowledge and bliss. And it is quite possible to think of Krishna at the time of death. But not just randomly because we're lucky, but because we make it a habit in this life to think about Krishna, to get to know Krishna, to hear about him, to learn about his qualities. And the Bhagavad-gita is the best start, because there we get a very good philosophical basis for understanding Krishna, and we also learn practically how to approach him. And more, we hear about him, we will become attracted. It will not become just another exercise in order to go somewhere in the future, but it will be satisfying in and of itself to hear about Krishna. But it takes some practice, and that practice is recommended here in the Bhagavad-gita, and Krishna is saying, there is no doubt of this. So here we have the guarantee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We can go to him, we can go back to him. There is no doubt of this. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for watching. We aim for updates every Tuesday and Friday. Please come back. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down there. We also have some links and information for you. And there is, of course, the subscribe button. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
I'm a Hare Krishna, and I approve this message. Subscribe. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Juta Padakamalang